Eros is caught in a whirlwind of emotions when his boss, the intimidating and enigmatic Cyrus Draco, offers him a job as his personal assistant, setting off a series of events that blur the lines between professional and personal. As Eros is drawn deeper into Cyrus's world, he finds himself torn between a passionate affair with Atlas, Cyrus's estranged son, and the complex, dark history between father and son. With tensions rising and secrets unraveling, Eros must navigate a dangerous love triangle that could change everything. Will he survive the emotional fallout, or will the weight of the past crush them all? Eros is unexpectedly called into the office of his powerful boss, Cyrus Draco. Eros enters Cyrus's lavish office with anxiety, unsure of what to expect, as he's already dealing with the fear of a potential career-ending mistake he made the day before. However, what he doesn't anticipate is Cyrus offering him the prestigious role of being his personal assistant, a job highly coveted within the company. This offer catches Eros completely off guard, making him question why Cyrus would pick him for such a position. As Cyrus speaks, there's a commanding tone in his voice, and his presence alone is enough to send a chill down Eros's spine. Cyrus, a man of refined elegance and intimidating power, suggests that Eros has been hiding in the background, implying that Eros has untapped potential that could be nurtured. This moment marks the beginning of an internal conflict for Eros, who is torn between his admiration for Cyrus's professionalism and charisma and the unease he feels under his intense, scrutinizing gaze. The dynamic between the two begins to shift as Cyrus's gaze locks with Eros's, and a subtle tension builds in the air, making it clear that this offer is more than just professional. There's an underlying complexity that Eros is only beginning to realize. Cyrus continues to engage with Eros on a much more personal level. After offering him the role of personal assistant, he steps even closer, using his powerful presence to make the situation even more intense. Cyrus's demeanor changes, and his tone softens slightly, though still carries that commanding authority. He starts complimenting Eros, highlighting his intelligence and capability, noting that he's been hiding his potential in the background and it's time for him to step forward. Eros, caught off guard by the praise, feels a rush of emotions. His heart pounds and his mind races with uncertainty about Cyrus's intentions. As Cyrus leans in, their proximity becomes undeniable. He seems to observe Eros not just with his eyes, but with an almost predatory gaze, studying him in a way that makes Eros uncomfortable yet intrigued. The close distance between them creates an undeniable tension, and Eros can't help but notice the warmth of Cyrus's body and the way his gray eyes flicker between his face and lips. This brief interaction makes Eros question whether there's more to the compliment and the offer than just professional interest. Could there be something more personal at play here? Is Cyrus flirting with him? Cyrus's words are laced with an unspoken promise. He says he needs someone he can trust, someone he can rely on, which in the context of their interaction feels almost intimate. Eros is left stunned, unable to fully comprehend whether this is just a professional gesture or if Cyrus's intentions go deeper. The atmosphere between them is thick with unspoken tension, and for a moment, Eros feels entirely captivated and vulnerable. He is unsure whether to pull away or lean into the connection that seems to be building between them, further complicating his feelings toward Cyrus. Eros finds himself at Atlas's apartment, a place that has started to feel familiar to him over the past few weeks. Atlas, who is Cyrus's business rival, has become an unexpected figure in Eros' life. While Eros's professional relationship with Cyrus is complex and charged with tension, his connection with Atlas is equally intense, but in a different way. The moment Eros enters Atlas's apartment, the atmosphere shifts. There is an undeniable chemistry between them, and their attraction becomes more evident. As Atlas gets closer to Eros, he picks up on Eros's nervousness, sensing that Eros is trying to play it cool but failing. Despite his best efforts, Eros is unable to hide how much Atlas affects him. The dynamic between them escalates quickly as Atlas's hands find their way to Eros's waist, pulling him in for a passionate kiss. The kiss is described as rough and needy, signifying that both of them have been holding back their emotions and desires. As they kiss, Eros loses himself in the moment, letting go of his doubts and the complicated feelings surrounding his connection with Cyrus. However, despite the intensity of the kiss and the way their bodies respond to each other, Eros's mind continues to race with the thought of Cyrus. He can't shake the nagging worry about what would happen if Cyrus found out, And this thought lingers in his mind as Atlas continues to kiss him, his hands roaming over Eros's body. Even as Eros gets lost in the moment with Atlas, the constant reminder of the potential consequences weighs on him. He is aware that what is happening between him and Atlas could complicate things further, as the two men are on opposite sides of a professional rivalry. But in that moment, Eros chooses to focus on the connection he shares with Atlas, allowing himself to get swept up in the physical and emotional pull between them, even though the repercussions of this affair are looming in the background. This internal conflict builds tension in Eros's mind, knowing that this relationship with Atlas, however fulfilling it may feel, is part of a much bigger, more dangerous web that he's become tangled in. Eros finds himself sitting across from Cyrus Draco at a formal business dinner that is far more than just a casual meal. The atmosphere is stiff and formal, full of societal expectations and business protocols. As the evening progresses, Eros realizes that this dinner is more than just a professional engagement. It feels like a test, a subtle game that Cyrus is playing. Cyrus, ever the confident businessman, continues to engage Eros in a conversation that seems to blur the lines between work and personal matters. Cyrus asks about Eros's progress in his new position and subtly pries into Eros's personal life, asking why they haven't had the chance to get to know each other outside of work. Eros tries to deflect the conversation, sticking to the standard answers about work and career, but Cyrus presses on, using his charm to shift the dynamic. His tone becomes softer, and he suggests that all work and no play isn't good for Eros, encouraging him to enjoy life a little. This statement, while seemingly innocuous, carries a double meaning. Eros starts to feel the weight of the conversation, realizing that Cyrus might be flirting with him. The tension builds, and Eros, still unsure of what Cyrus truly wants, feels a mixture of confusion and intrigue. This dinner, which Eros had expected to be a normal business affair, starts to take on a more personal tone, and Cyrus's eyes linger on Eros in a way that makes Eros feel exposed and vulnerable. Eros becomes acutely aware of the subtle power Cyrus holds over him, and the way he can make Eros feel both uncomfortable and intensely drawn to him at the same time. This moment marks a pivotal point for Eros. He realizes that Cyrus is not just his boss, but is beginning to take a more personal interest in him, and Eros is unsure how to navigate this newfound dynamic. The dinner ends with Eros still unsure of where he stands with Cyrus, but he can no longer deny that their relationship has crossed into dangerous, uncharted territory. The emotional complexity between Eros and Atlas deepens as they both confront their pasts and share more vulnerable moments together. After spending more time with Atlas, Eros finds that there is an undeniable emotional connection forming between them. This is especially evident when Atlas opens up about his traumatic past, the loss of his mother, and his strained relationship with his father, Cyrus. Atlas shares a painful memory from his teenage years when he first learned of his father's public coming out. This revelation had rocked his world, and the resulting chaos within his family had a profound impact on him. Atlas's pain is palpable as he recalls the moments after his mother's death, a death that he feels was directly caused by Cyrus's actions. As Atlas talks, Eros listens carefully, offering support without judgment. Eros's empathy for Atlas grows as he realizes just how much Atlas has been carrying, his unresolved anger toward his father, the grief of losing his mother, and the confusion of trying to reconcile his love for both his parents while dealing with the fallout of their choices. This moment is a significant turning point for their relationship, as Eros understands that Atlas's hardened exterior is the result of deep emotional scars, and he feels a stronger pull to Atlas. Eros is no longer just attracted to Atlas's physical presence. He is drawn to the vulnerability and the hurt that Atlas carries inside, which is slowly revealed through their conversations. For Atlas, opening up about his mother and the trauma he's experienced is cathartic but also difficult. Eros reassures him, offering a safe space where Atlas doesn't have to hide his pain. This emotional exchange strengthens the bond between them, and Eros becomes more aware of how much he cares for Atlas, not just as a physical attraction, but as someone he wants to support through his emotional struggles. This is a pivotal moment in their relationship because it marks the shift from casual encounters to a deeper, more meaningful connection, where both of them begin to rely on each other for emotional support and understanding. It's also the point where Eros starts to confront his own feelings and his role in the complicated dynamics between Atlas, Cyrus, and himself. Eros becomes more deeply entangled in the emotional turmoil surrounding Atlas, Cyrus, and the tragic loss of Atlas's mother. After spending time with Atlas, Eros begins to see the layers of pain and unresolved issues that Atlas carries with him, and he feels compelled to support Atlas in any way he can. However, Eros is also drawn into a complex emotional web when he starts to feel that the information he has received so far about Atlas's family dynamics is incomplete. The more Eros gets to know Atlas, the more he becomes curious about the details of Atlas's mother's death and the role that Cyrus, Atlas's estranged father, played in the events that led to it. Determined to get to the bottom of things, Eros decides to visit Iris, Atlas's aunt, whom he has met previously. Iris is portrayed as a woman who is very close to Atlas and his late mother, Ophelia. Eros hopes that Iris can provide him with the missing pieces of the puzzle, particularly surrounding Ophelia's death. Iris's reaction to seeing Eros is somewhat unusual and evasive, and her comment about Eros resembling someone from her past only deepens Eros's curiosity. This moment is significant because it introduces a sense of mystery and foreshadows a deeper connection between Eros and Ophelia. When Eros directly asks Iris about Ophelia's death, Iris becomes visibly tense, and her responses seem contradictory and guarded. She mentions that she tried to save Ophelia after she fell, but the timeline of events doesn't quite add up. The inconsistency in her story makes Eros even more suspicious, and he feels like Iris is holding something back. Despite Eros's attempts to push for more information, Iris remains cryptic, suggesting that the situation was a blur and that she doesn't want to relive the painful memories. This leaves Eros with more questions than answers, and he begins to suspect that Iris knows more about the incident than she is letting on. The tension in this point lies in Eros's increasing realization that there is more to the story than what he's been told. As he digs deeper into the mystery surrounding Ophelia's death, Eros uncovers layers of pain, guilt, and hidden truths that affect both Atlas and Cyrus. Iris' reluctance to open up, coupled with the inconsistencies in her story, forces Eros to question the narratives he has been given. This sets the stage for further emotional revelations and challenges as Eros attempts to piece together the truth, all while balancing his growing feelings for Atlas and his complicated relationship with Cyrus. The mystery surrounding Ophelia's death and its impact on Atlas's family becomes a key driving force in the narrative, propelling Eros further into a complex emotional conflict. The plot takes a dramatic turn as Eros decides to confront Cyrus about the events surrounding Ophelia's death and the complicated relationship dynamics between him, Atlas, and Iris. After spending time researching and piecing together the puzzle about Ophelia's death, Eros finds himself at a breaking point where he can no longer ignore the unresolved tension between him and Cyrus. The mystery surrounding Ophelia's tragic fall from the roof has been haunting Eros, and his interactions with Iris and Atlas have only deepened the sense of confusion and urgency to uncover the truth. Eros enters Cyrus's office with a clear purpose: to confront him about what he has learned. He holds onto his knowledge from Iris, specifically the inconsistencies in her account of Ophelia's death, and uses this as leverage to get Cyrus to finally open up. Eros' approach is direct and confident as he declares that he knows everything and that he has spoken to Iris. The confrontation in this moment is intense, as Eros is determined to force Cyrus to come clean, while also trying to protect Atlas from any more emotional harm. Eros' mind races, knowing that the truth will have serious implications, not just for his own career, but also for his relationship with Atlas, who is deeply affected by his father's actions. Cyrus's response to Eros is calm, but there's a hidden layer of defensiveness beneath his composed exterior. He denies the full extent of Eros's claims and insists that Eros is making assumptions based on limited information. This reaction from Cyrus causes Eros to question his own understanding of the situation. Is Cyrus really guilty of the accusations being made, or is he simply a man trying to protect his family's reputation? Eros's confrontation with Cyrus becomes a turning point in the story, forcing both characters to confront the layers of emotional baggage they've been carrying. It's during this exchange that Cyrus, perhaps feeling cornered, begins to reveal the truth about his past relationship with Ophelia. He explains the nature of his marriage to her, how it was an arrangement designed to secure the family's fortune, which evolved into a platonic love, with both partners understanding and accepting each other's relationships outside the marriage. However, the real revelation comes when Cyrus admits that Ophelia and Iris had been involved in a romantic relationship, something Eros had not expected. Cyrus also reveals that Ophelia's tragic fall was an accident, one that occurred during a heated argument between Ophelia and Iris. The details of this moment are shocking to Eros as he begins to piece together the complexity of the emotions, betrayals, and regrets that led to Ophelia's death. Eros learns that the accident was a culmination of years of emotional strain, with Iris blaming herself for Ophelia's death. The realization that Atlas's mother was involved in a secret relationship with Iris, and that Cyrus's own actions might have contributed to the emotional turmoil surrounding her death, creates a massive emotional burden for Eros. He is left trying to process the revelations while also understanding how they affect Atlas, who is still carrying the weight of the betrayal and loss from his father and the pain of his mother's death. This point highlights Eros's role as a listener and a mediator between two complex and damaged relationships. Atlas's fraught connection with his father and the hidden romantic history between Iris and Ophelia. It also shows Eros's growing sense of empathy and his struggle to find his place in a situation that is much larger than him. The confrontation with Cyrus uncovers more than just the facts about Ophelia's death. It reveals the deep emotional turmoil within the family and sets the stage for further healing and reconciliation. Eros becomes increasingly entangled in the emotional complexities surrounding Atlas, his family, and his own feelings. This point focuses on Eros's growing emotional connection to Atlas and his struggle to balance his feelings with the overwhelming tension between Atlas and his father, Cyrus. After his direct confrontation with Cyrus, where Eros learns the tragic truth about Ophelia's death and the complicated family dynamics, Eros begins to reflect deeply on the implications of his actions and his involvement with both Atlas and Cyrus. Eros's feelings for Atlas, which were initially more physical and emotional attraction, have now become deeper and more complicated. Atlas has opened up to Eros in a way that no one else has, and Eros starts to feel a strong sense of responsibility toward Atlas, not just as his lover, but as someone who needs emotional support. However, Eros knows that the situation is not easy. Atlas is still reeling from the pain of losing his mother and from the fractured relationship with his father. As much as Eros wants to be there for Atlas, he is also aware of the immense emotional weight that Atlas is carrying. Despite the growing closeness, Eros cannot ignore the fact that he is caught in the middle of a messy family dynamic. On one side, there's Cyrus, who has become a father figure in Eros's life, but also the source of so much pain for Atlas. On the other side, there's Atlas, who is now a person Eros deeply cares about, and someone who has been betrayed by the very people he loves. Eros is constantly caught between these two figures, unsure of how to navigate his role in their lives without making things worse for anyone involved. This point is also significant because it highlights Eros's internal struggle as he tries to reconcile his feelings for Atlas with the guilt he feels about being involved with the family. He starts to feel conflicted about his position. He is becoming more and more emotionally invested in Atlas, but his loyalty to Atlas also puts him at odds with his loyalty to Cyrus, who is still his boss and a person he has worked with closely. Eros wants to help Atlas heal, but he also realizes that his involvement with Atlas could potentially complicate things even more for both of them. The pressure of living in this complicated emotional web takes its toll on Eros, who begins to feel conflicted about his future. In the aftermath of his confrontation with Cyrus and the ongoing developments with Atlas, Eros's perspective on the situation begins to shift. He recognizes that no matter what decisions he makes, there will be consequences, emotionally, personally, and professionally. He is stuck between wanting to support Atlas, being loyal to his own integrity, and navigating the difficult relationship he has with Cyrus. This point in the story is crucial because it forces Eros to take a step back and evaluate his role in the lives of both Atlas and Cyrus. He has to confront the reality of being emotionally involved in a family with so much unresolved pain, and decide whether he can continue in this complex situation or if he needs to step away for his own well-being. Marks a pivotal moment in the story where Eros starts to make crucial decisions about his relationship with both Atlas and Cyrus. This point is characterized by Eros's deepening understanding of the emotional turmoil surrounding Atlas's family, the tragic past involving Ophelia's death, and the intricate relationships within the family dynamic. At this stage, Eros is compelled to act after gaining more insight into the situation, and he is finally confronted with a difficult decision: to continue his emotional involvement with Atlas, navigate the complex family history, and maintain his professional relationship with Cyrus, or walk away from it all to avoid further complications. After learning the truth about Ophelia's death and the strained relationship between Cyrus and Atlas, Eros realizes that his own position in this situation is becoming increasingly precarious. He is emotionally invested in Atlas, who is still dealing with unresolved grief and anger about his father. At the same time, Eros finds himself caught in the middle of a tense father-son relationship and the aftermath of a tragedy that has scarred both men. Eros is torn between two conflicting worlds: one with Atlas, who is becoming more than just a romantic interest, and one with Cyrus, who is not only his boss but also someone he's grown to respect and understand on a personal level. The growing tension within the family makes Eros feel like an outsider who has become too deeply involved in something that may be beyond his control. In this point, Eros also begins to feel the weight of his emotions and the consequences of his actions. He knows that if he continues to be involved with Atlas, it may strain his relationship with Cyrus, especially given the emotional complexities between father and son. The sense of responsibility Eros feels for Atlas's well-being begins to overshadow his own emotional needs, and he realizes that his involvement with Atlas may only complicate things further. At the same time, Eros is uncertain about how to handle the situation with Cyrus, especially after discovering the truth about Ophelia's death and learning more about Cyrus's past. Eros finds himself at a crossroads, unsure whether to continue working for Cyrus and maintaining his professional distance, or whether he should step away from both Atlas and Cyrus to avoid further heartache and confusion. Eros's inner conflict comes to a head as he is forced to acknowledge the complex emotional bonds he has formed with both Atlas and Cyrus. He has developed a deeper emotional connection with Atlas, and his feelings for him are undeniable. But at the same time, Eros is realizing the emotional toll that being involved in this family is taking on him. He questions whether he is strong enough to carry the weight of Atlas's grief and anger, as well as his own feelings, while also navigating his professional life with Cyrus. In this moment, Eros's vulnerability is on full display, and the story delves into the internal struggle that he faces in balancing his personal emotions with the broader, more complicated family dynamics at play. Ultimately, Point 9 serves as a turning point in Eros's character development. It forces him to make a choice: to continue down the path of emotional involvement with Atlas, accepting the challenges that come with it, or to step back and distance himself from the entire situation to protect himself from further emotional turmoil. This decision marks the beginning of Eros's emotional maturation, as he faces the consequences of his choices and the potential fallout of being involved in such a complex web of relationships. Point 9 sets the stage for the final resolution of Eros's journey, where he must confront his own desires, limitations, and the impact of his actions on the people he cares about. The story focuses on the emotional aftermath of the confrontation between Cyrus, Atlas, and Eros. It marks the crucial turning point where the complicated relationships between the characters are exposed, and their personal struggles come to light. In this moment, Eros finds himself caught between Atlas and Cyrus, trying to navigate the tumultuous emotional dynamics of both men. Point 10 is significant because it deals with a shift in how Eros views his relationship with Atlas, as well as his growing awareness of the deeper emotional scars both father and son are dealing with. Following the dramatic showdown, where Eros witnesses the raw anger and pain between Cyrus and Atlas, he begins to understand the depth of the trauma that has shaped their relationship. The revelation that Cyrus's wife, Ophelia, died under tragic and emotionally complicated circumstances, a death tied to both Cyrus's public coming out and the subsequent strain it caused in his marriage, becomes a key piece of the puzzle. Eros starts to recognize that the personal pain both Cyrus and Atlas carry is the result of years of emotional turmoil, regret, and unhealed wounds. For Eros, this point serves as a moment of reckoning. He realizes that his role in this drama is not as simple as being caught in a romantic triangle. He is not just dealing with the fallout from his relationship with Atlas, but is also becoming a source of healing or additional pain for the family, depending on how things unfold. He must contend with the guilt and confusion of being emotionally involved with Atlas while also being entangled with Cyrus, his boss, who has his own unresolved issues. At this stage, Eros reflects on how his presence in their lives might further complicate things. He understands that Atlas and Cyrus are both deeply hurt by each other and that Eros, by being in the middle, risks exacerbating their emotional wounds. However, despite the complexities, Eros cannot ignore the bond that has formed between him and Atlas. He begins to see that Atlas's struggle to reconcile with his father is not just about the pain of his mother's death, but about a lifetime of unresolved anger, abandonment, and betrayal. In that moment, Eros faces a difficult decision: whether to distance himself from both Atlas and Cyrus to avoid being a catalyst for further conflict or to continue to stay involved, risking his own emotional well-being for the sake of helping Atlas heal. Point 10 also deepens Eros's empathy and understanding of Atlas's situation. He begins to see Atlas as someone who is not just a person he is attracted to or emotionally drawn to, but as someone who has been profoundly affected by the actions of his father. This realization shifts Eros's perspective, allowing him to be more patient and compassionate with Atlas. It also makes him question his own role in the relationship. Does he want to stay with Atlas because of a genuine emotional connection, or is he simply filling the void left by Atlas's deep personal pain? This internal conflict drives Eros to seek clarity, and it makes him question what it would mean to stay involved with Atlas while dealing with the unresolved issues between father and son. As Eros tries to understand where he fits into this emotionally charged situation, he also becomes more aware of how his relationship with Atlas is not only personal but is also becoming public. The dynamic between the characters is shifting from one of private romantic attraction to one of deeper emotional involvement. Eros understands that his connection with Atlas could either be the key to Atlas's healing or could cause more problems in their already fractured family. Marks the turning point in the emotional and narrative trajectory of the story. This point is crucial because it reveals the complexity of the relationships between the characters, particularly the underlying unresolved emotions and the personal choices they must confront. It shows the characters navigating the aftermath of the dramatic family confrontation and starts to set the stage for healing, understanding, and potentially new beginnings. At this point, Atlas is seen in a more vulnerable light as he begins to reconcile with the past and his strained relationship with his father, Cyrus. While he initially responds with anger and bitterness towards Cyrus due to the long-standing issues and the trauma surrounding his mother's death, there is a subtle shift in his emotional state. The confrontation between father and son leaves Atlas wrestling with both the pain of betrayal and the weight of his own unresolved feelings. Atlas has spent years blaming Cyrus for what happened to his mother, but the conversation between Cyrus and Eros in the office finally leads to a crack in the wall of resentment Atlas has built up.